All right. It's good to have you here, Mama. Linda Hale. What did it say they call
Hello,
you?
hello.
Uma Hale?
Yep. Oh, my Hale.
Instead of grandma, it's Uma Hale.
Yep. Oma's German,
Oh, that makes sense.
but we're
Okay.
not German.
So you have a story for us today to get us started with today's interview.
Okay, you want about the chest then? Okay. I've got a very imaginative daughter-in-law, and that is Andy and Liz. Well, Liz is the daughter-in-law, and they were out garage sailing. And as they were going around, they found this huge pirate type chest with the round top, the locks on it. It even had its key still. So I don't know how it was done or made, but they got it off a garage sale. And they started thinking about it, and they said, you know, Jeff's birthday's coming up. He's going to be 8. This is the time to have a good pirate type birthday party. So they went looking for things. They found old coins in the garage sales. They found a bugle. They found, well, I can't think of all the things they had, but it was interesting. Oh dear, all these ums and yeah. So the day before the birthday, they went out to Santa Cruz. And no, it was Andy. I got too many kids. Okay, so Andy brought a shovel and got a couple of friends to help him. And they dug a really deep hole, probably 5 foot down in the sand. And not many people were around, so it must have been early in the morning. And it must have been the day of the birthday on Saturday. So they dug this hole and they put this chest down inside there and put the chest in and covered it over with sand and things. And then one of them just stayed right there by it so nobody would start digging right there. And Liz brought all the kids over and family and some of the kids from the neighborhood. And so we had about 10, 12 children there. And they played all day in the sand, and they made castles and got in the water and did all kinds of fun things. And then their mom says, for a change, let's go start digging holes. So, this is Santa Cruz Bay, and this is where a lot of pirate ships came in, and they would sometimes not make it up here, and they would break up. Or else the pirate would say, this is a good place to hide a chest with lots of riches and things. And so she said, let's go looking for a pirate chest. So they began looking, and Andy was over to one spot, and he says, hey, this is kind of an easy area. Let's dig right here. So they began to dig, and they had little shovels and big shovels and all kinds of kids digging in here and digging. And they dug really far down, and they heard a thump, thump. He said, oh, there is something down here. They all got excited, and they were like dogs. They were just throwing the sand back, and I said, get out of the way. These boys are going to dig this all out. And there it was, a chest. And the kids opened it, and here were beads and gold, and they thought were gold, were coins. And there was just everything you'd think of it that they would want. They had those guns with the rubber bands on them, and they just had more things because it was a huge chest. Well, while we were all excited, the kids were doing this, and other people came around to see what was going on. Up above the cliffs, because we're down by the ocean. There's a big tall cliffs and people live up in there. And these two teenagers looked down at all the commotion going on, and they jumped all the way down, got down by us, and they says, "What did you guys find?" And the kids were saying, "A pirate's chest, a pirate's chest." And he said, "What? We haven't had, we've been here all these 16, 17 years. And we've dug through here, we've done stuff, and we've never found a pirate's chest. What did you guys do?" And they said, "We just kept digging and digging right here." And so everybody was so excited. And I was about ready to say they should have called a newspaper reporter, because it was so well done. They just really put it off well. And so they put the trunk in the back of their big van and brought it home. And you know what? Today they still have that. They cleaned it all up and they keep it in their front room, and it is a focal point for people to ask about. Now, where did this big chest come from? And they still have some of the things in there, and the little kids are just so excited. And I open it up and say, "This is it," and they'll tell a story about it, and they get so excited. And oh, I'm so glad that they did something like that. That was a very unusual and very, very well planned out party.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know what that makes me think about is when I was a young teenager and my young brothers, there's oftentimes that you would do special little things for us. But one of the biggest ones I remember is how Dad would often be working nights. And so in the afternoon, we'd slip out of the house after we came home from school, and you would take us off to park. And we visit all the parks in the whole area. It seemed like over those couple of months when Dad was doing that special project that required him to work nights. And we'd just find the most interesting parks, some that had spraying water jets on certain days. You could go there and play in the water. And then other ones had a really interesting kind of playground. And then there was like Vasona Lake and some of those that would have water, and the ducks out there, we'd bring bread to feed. So you made special activities for us to do too when we were young. Do you remember some of those kind of things?
Yes, I think it was, I think in Campbell, they had a big water thing, and they had like 6 cannons, and you could move them around and squirt water at each other. And to me, that was one of the best ones. And the kids would always say, "Let's go over where the cannons are." So that's the where we would go.
Yep, yep. Well, I also remember too, often we'd take trips out to the coast, and we'd go to the beach, which was about maybe 45 minutes away or whatever. And I can think about how as kids, you'd say, "Okay, everybody hurry up and get all your chores done, and then we'll go over to the beach." Maybe this was during the summer when we're out of school. And so we'd all work really hard to get our chores done. And so
or if it wasn't getting it done, it would be, Dad would say, "Mow the lawn before you go." Well, one of the kids would loosen the batteries or undo a wire, and then come and say, "It doesn't work, Mom." And so here I am giving him a treat. Say, "Yay, let's go to the beach then." You can't get the lawnmower to go. But they still had to do it later. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I remember that we would get all excited. We'd all get in the van and we'd drive out there, like I say, maybe 45 minutes, whatever. We get to the beach, and we'd have our little picnic sandwiches and treats with us, and laying out there. And it's almost always covered in fog, and not very often do you really have a good bright sun in Northern California on the beach there. And so we'd enjoy it. Sometimes you'd play in the cold, surf. You come out, you'd have to quickly put on a sweatshirt and sweatpants because it was chilly, probably like 55 or whatever degrees, and windy. But we'd have some of our favorite beaches we'd go to. Was it let's see, what was it called? Pajaro Dunes.
Pajaro Dunes.
And then there was another one, Twin Lakes, and it actually had a river or a creek that came in. And so it would come in and then it would go right over the top of the sand into the surf. And all these kids would be out there in the neighborhood as well as us. And we'd prefer to play in the warmer creek. Plus that was moving over the sand and it didn't have the problems with the surf and it wasn't as cold as the ocean. And so it made for a real fun little place to play in the water. It was only like maybe 18 inches deep or 2 feet deep most of the places.
But I also liked Monterey and let's see, what's down below Monterey? With the white sand.
White sand.
Where they have the Gulf. It was Monterey, but there's
Monterey
another
Bay,
place.
and then Seaside.
That's up above.
Okay. I was going to say one more thing. And I remember the funny thing was so I was like, okay, it's time to go. It might be like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever. And a lot of other people started coming to the beach and just started to get crowded. Maybe the sun finally started to break and come out. And we didn't want to get sunburned. And we'd all leave about that time, 1 or 2 o'clock. And when you leave, you're wet, you're cold, you got sand, wet sand everywhere, and you don't feel very good as you're trying to put something over it. And everybody gets in the car and everybody's cranky and they're like, I don't want to go home. And we'd be poking and pinching on each other and driving home. It'd be just the opposite. On the way in that morning, we were all excited and happy and woohoo, we're going to the beach. And then going home, we'd all be like, trying to sleep. And again, you're all covered in sand.
But there were showers there. And we'd quickly run through the showers. Now, later, I learned you have to, if you put baby powder all over you, the sand falls off. So when you get through with all your playing at the beach, you put baby powder all over you, and then it just comes off. But that was the reason your dad didn't like to go to the beaches, because of all the cleaning up afterwards. You'd have to clean all the sand out of the car. And I says, I don't mind. I would rather do that and be able to have memories of going to the beach. And so, yeah, the beach was a great place, even Andy lived there too. Right. And so we'd go out with family and I remember when Justin and Matt would come and different ones when they were grown up, and they came down and we'd have a reunion and we'd have a big fireplace they'd have areas fixed so that you could put logs out there and burn them, and we'd be there till late at night, Andy's kids and everybody, and then it looked like an African traveler thing. They'd all be in a line carrying baskets and different things, some on their head, holding them or dragging things along, and umbrellas.
You have to come down the cliffs and there's stairs and you got to go all the way down out to get out there on the coast, out there on the sandy beach. And yeah, it's quite a trek from the parking lot sometimes. Or if the whole neighborhood doesn't have any parking, you might have to park 3 blocks away or something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, when you were young, obviously you were in Idaho and didn't have the coast nearby. So where would your friend and families in the community enjoy going to for recreation like that in the summer?
Well, there was Donetta and Lava that had hot water, warm water. And Donetta was close by, probably about 35 minutes away. And there was a lot of times we went over there and go in the water. And it wasn't built up like it is now. It was just a small place. And people would just go over there. There were some rings to play for the guys to play on. And there'd be a slide in there. And then at nighttime, they would let all the water out, and it'd go down and water all big lawn that they would use for picnics, and fill it back up with new clean water. So never had any problems with that. And then lava had hot spots, and they'd have well, I remember it was a covered lava, and we'd go inside there and it'd be dark and moist, and we'd swim through there and come out and take a swimming. Well, I didn't know then that they had these things, but you have swimming suit and you'd take it through the wringer and dry it all out, get it pretty well dried. And we'd help our mom and get her all dressed and ready to go. But they also went over to the well, it wasn't hot tubs, they were the hot vats anyway. They had seats around this area, and they'd have the water coming in. It was pretty good. And I know there used to be some of the neighbors that say, you need to go over there in the real hot spots, Nettie, and put your hands down in there, and that's going to help your hands a lot. And she said, I'm not going to burn my skin off. So yeah, but she really, really enjoyed being in those sauna type hot places. And they liked, my dad and her would go over there even when we didn't go. Okay, that's about all I can think of on that.
That's good. Well, I was going to say something too. I was thinking about bumps and scrapes and cuts and everything else. And as kids up there in the San Martin house, the Hale ranch, and we just would run all over the place, and we had all kinds of pastures and places to play. But sometimes we'd go in and out of the house, in and out of the house, and you'd finally say, okay, everybody stay outside. And somebody might come in, oh, but I got a scratch, I need a Band-Aid, and oh, wait a second, I bumped myself. And so if I remember right, you made a rule. It was something like this. She's like, okay, everybody stay outside until dinner time and don't come in, even if you've got a scrape, unless your scrape is dripping blood, and then we'll take care of it. Is that right?
Yes, I think that's the way it went. And
well, because like you said earlier, we always had
longer. Oh.
Yep.
But you guys got into a lot of scrapes and all kinds of things with each other. And that's the one thing about having 7 boys. When they got mad at each other, they'd get the heck out of it. They'd beat each other up, knock each other down, and then it was all over. When they had done it, they give a hug and they're finished. And I understand girls are opposite. They hang on to their problem. But no, the boys were always very good and very close when we were young.
I think being the oldest of all the 7 boys, a lot of times of course we would fight and do things like you talked about, but usually for me, I was much bigger. And so I would like twist, skin and just pinch and be ornery with my little brothers to kind of, try and be mean to them if I was mad at them or something. But I don't think us brothers really got into a knockdown, punch out fight and knocking each other in the face. And like you said, we became rather tough kids. Growing up, there's only one time I can think of that I ever got in a punching out fight. And that was because there was one kid, if I can say this story real quick, there when we lived in Saratoga, and at the junior high, there's one kid, I don't know why, he always felt like being a bully. And on the bus, he'd always be ornery with me and mean and saying weird things. And he'd be the one trying to pinch on me and kind of be pushing me around. And I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of tried to be rather pacifist and just keep away from him. But it got to be worse and worse when I'd get off the bus. Even though he lived like 2 blocks away, he'd get off at the same bus stop just so that he could push me around. And then one day at school, at the junior high, back by the baseball park, and we were having PE, the physical training period together. And I don't remember what was going on. It was like baseball. So you're all waiting on the lineup to bat. And he was just being really ornery, saying all these kind of things. And he had recently just got braces, and he had braces on his teeth, a new thing for him. And he was just making up all these things, and just got me so frustrated that I finally decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. And I went over and I pushed him on the chest, and we kind of pushed each other back and forth, and he punched me in the chest. And then I thought about it, and I reeled back and I gave him a right hook right across the mouth, and his lips and everything got stuck in the braces and cut. And so he's just bleeding horrendously, more than a normal punch to that area would be because of those braces. And wouldn't you know it, he never gave me any more trouble after that. And everybody else kind of stood back and said, whoa, okay, he's not quite the pacifist we thought if you push him far enough. And that's all it needed. That was the one time when I ever had a fight when I was a teenager.
You were a good kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you always would say, oh, you're such a good boy. And so when I got to be about 22 or 23, that's when I said, I need to break away and go do my own thing. And then I went way out there and experienced life. I don't know. So, but as a teenager, yes, I was very much the pacifist, the very easygoing. But I had to learn how to take care of 6 brothers as well as the situation. And so because of that, I didn't get drawn into a lot of the drama that maybe somebody else would, because they didn't have to be managing little brothers at the same time that they are, involved in whatever situation was going on. So it's kind of an interesting way of life. And I realized that as a sergeant in the military, that became part of that way of reacting to incidents. When we do military exercises, we would simulate that the enemy was attacking, and we had our defensive positions, and we had to make sure that some of the different airmen were in the right place, and I'd be giving out commands and things like that. And despite the tension of the moment, I was able to keep my cool and manage the situation, keep an eye on what's going on, delegate out. And I think I learned that from you and from managing my brothers in whatever really dramatic situation was going on. So even if a brother got a good cut and they're bleeding all over the place, I was really good about, okay, let's just put direct contact on there and let's get you in the house. We'll clean it up. Whereas I've seen other people, like in the military, somebody got hurt and they freak out like they've never seen blood before. And I actually had the opportunity in the Army to get this 80 hours of training. Almost every time I deploy, it's like 5 times, 80 hours of training to be a field medic. And one of the things we would do in the middle of a military exercise with all the enemy engagement going on, we're firing blanks, or some exercises we're firing real rounds at targets and all those things. And then the referee, that person of the exercise would come up and drop a card and just said, boom, a bomb went off. And these people over here just got fragged. And now your medic, which is me, needs to get over there and start to do the field dressings and take care of this trauma. And I think a lot of that level-headedness came from you, Mama, dealing with my younger brothers and being that older brother that had to deal with that. Not every time, but I have to think that was part of that. So thank you, Mama, for helping me to be that good boy, the level-headed young man.
Oh, I think it was your dad that was level-headed. He's on it, was very good at that kind of stuff too.
That's true. That's true.
Now I was thinking, most of the things that ever happened to people was Matt. And when we had when there was one patch of ground that the neighbors didn't use, and when the spring would come and the snows had thawed, we didn't have snow, but anything, this
the mud would dry up.
when it would start raining, this puddle would be mud, just mud. And he would have the guys come over, and that was the first football games they used to have, as they'd just get just as black and muddy and dirty and just fighting and playing, kicking and doing things until one year, because they'd been doing it about 4 or 5 years, and one of his friends from school broke his leg out there. And we had to call the mom, and she came and said, "Oh, it's okay. I mean, he's the one that wanted to play." And I thought, "No, Matt, you're getting too big and old to be doing that. You're going to be breaking everybody up." So
Yeah,
that was one.
Matt's always been the stocky, muscle-bound guy, and a lot of the other brothers, rather tall and slender.
More
And
like
so
the dad.
he was more the football player from young age, and yeah, that fullback style guy. Yep.
Well, there was one other thing too. Out in the back of our San Martin home was a big acreage of strawberries. And the man had all these strawberries, and he'd have a dog in there to protect them and things. And they were supposed to stay out of them. And I didn't know they were going over and having strawberry fights. And they would throw the strawberries at each other. And they came home one day, and here was this gooey red eye Matt had. And I says, "Oh, what did you do to your eye?" And he said, "I just kind of got hit with one of the kids." And I says, "Well, what were you doing?" And so before that, I didn't know they played in the strawberries. So he says, "Well, somebody hit me with a strawberry right in the eye." And so we talked about it and everything. And I says, "You need to go, all of you boys need to go over and apologize to that farmer." And so we went over, and he was a little Japanese guy, just very nice. And he would bow in front of me and things. And he was like, it's okay, Mrs. Hale, it's okay. He said, and he would bring me strawberries. He'd give them to the children if he saw them out there in the back. And he'd say, "Here's a basket of strawberries for your mom and for you guys." That way he kept him out of the strawberries. And then he had to get the dog out there too, that they'd had to watch out for. So I think of things like that these kids did that mother was unaware of completely.
And that's right. Yeah, there was like 10 acres of strawberries all lined out. And one thing I remember now, when I was there younger, see, that was probably when I'd already left the house, because I only lived there for about 5 years and then I moved on. But when we first got there, we'd be outside working in our back pastures with the cattle or something, and the Mexican American field workers would be out there pulling weeds or whatever it was they were doing, and I guess they'd run out of water, and they'd come over and they'd see Dad, and Dad would have his cowboy hat on, and he'd have flannel shirt on and jeans, and I guess he must have had a lot of sun back then, because he had a good tan on him. And they'd come up to him and they'd start speaking to him in Spanish, "Agua, por favor, agua." And he knew enough that meant they needed some more water. So he would take their buckets or their jugs and go fill them up from the hose and get that back to them. And in those days, one of the managers told Ed and I that we could go back there and get the strawberries. We weren't doing strawberry fights, so we had the privilege of getting strawberries whenever we needed. And I'll tell you what, these were the biggest strawberries. Well, some of them were the biggest ones that they don't release in those little baskets you buy at the store. These were the big ones that they probably sell specialty to be covered in chocolate and things like that. And they were so delicious to pick them fresh. And you could literally pick a handful every day. And it was just absolutely wonderful. And those strawberries would grow for about 8 months out of the year. So that was wonderful. Do you remember what was on the other side of the other pasture, our neighbors there?
Yes, had llamas, big tall dogs. I don't know what you call those dogs.
I'm thinking about
One,
the field on the other side between us and Murphy, and I think it was chili peppers. So it was kind of a triangle shaped, and it was probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 acres or something of chili peppers. Well, the cows, sometimes they would get tired of hay and tired of just eating the little sprouts of grass in the base of the, on the ground there. And they'd see that bright green big leaves of the chili peppers on the other side of the fence. And we would have that fence up, and it had an electric wire on the top. And the cows learned that if they leaned up against it, it didn't feel very good. So they didn't like that electric fence. But we had one cow, was pretty smart and pretty mean. And what she did is she pushed the other cow, the dairy cow, the mama cow, pushed her calf first up against the fence. And by leaning on that calf took the brunt of the electric charge, broke the fence, broke the charge, while the little calf is just screaming out. And then the fence would be broken down, and then she could easily walk out, and then the cow would get out into the peppers. And I think it was one day I was off to school, and another one of those days when you, Mom, came rushing out there to my school and found me, and I got a note that I needed to get home, and you were waiting for me in the office. So I went home because our cow had gotten into the pepper fields. And when the cows eat the pepper leaves and the plant and even the peppers themselves, apparently it doesn't bother them immediately, but in their stomachs, it makes really bad, upset stomach. And they would just be hollering and bellowing and awful noise. So yeah, I had to get out there and quickly try and get them out of those pepper fields. Remember that?
But not only that, some of the neighbors didn't have that fences up. And our mama cow loved running out there and going all over that's when I'd call you and Ed and say, come home, come and get our cow, Sweetie Pie, bring her home. And you'd be out there looking and looking for her. And she knew exactly where to go to hide from you and have to take one of our dogs with us to bark and keep them coming back.
I think she was the smarter one that we had, because we would leave the gate open for close to the house, but usually the cows were out in the south pasture. But if somebody left the gates open between the south pasture, the north pasture, and then into the front yard, the cow would make her way around and around all those obstacles, and she would get out there in the front yard where we'd have really nice tall grass in our front little area. But like you said, then all of a sudden she realized, wait a minute, there's a street out front here. She'd start walking down the street and end up in the neighbor's yard. And then, yeah, we would have to pull her away from the neighbors. You walk a block away to be in somebody else's front yard eating on their grass. Yep, that was funny. I think especially Ed and I, we learned a lot of responsibility and things like that with animals that we had when we first moved out there. I think that's why Dad wanted us to move to San Martin and to have the animals so that we could learn responsibility and maturity with all those animals.
Well, I had to learn and grow too. When we first got there and had things going pretty well, Dad was saying, okay, we need a pig or two. And so he says, I want you to go down to the auction and pick up 2 pigs, get them small, then we can do things with them. And so I took the pickup that had a cover on top and drove down to the place down there in Monterey, and went in there and parked and went inside and found I had to have a sign to hold up and as to what number I was. And so different animals came through, and the cows and some horses, and then I got the little squealing pigs. And oh, they were so cute. The little baby ones were so cute. So I put my sign up and I got one. And then I put my sign up again. I got a second one. And I says, where do I pick them up? And they said, when you're all done, we can put them in your truck for you. And I says, oh, okay. So I sat there for a while because they weren't ready for it. And then they brought out, and like the cows that had been ignored by the mother, and they were just small and they needed to be bottle fed and things. And there was this one little calf. He was so cute. And he wasn't really very old, probably about a month old. And he was scrawny looking, and he needed milk and everything. And he was just bawling. And I brought him out and he was going, Mom, Mom. And I couldn't help it. Up goes my sign, and I bought him. And it was very cheap because they were just more or less giving them away. So they went out and put the 2 pigs in my truck, and then they got this little calf and stood him out there in the back. And he'd never seen pigs, I don't think, and he was scared to death. And they closed it all up, and I went to go, and I was looking, and he was just shivering and standing in one place and couldn't move his legs much. And these little 2 pigs were squealing and moving around. And so it was quite a nice ride going home. I kept looking in the back to see how they were doing. And that poor little calf was just scared to death. And we got home and had these 2 little pigs. And Tim says, well, that's good. That's what I needed. He says, here's our pen for him. And I says, well, I got one more thing. I got us another little calf. And it's just this baby calf. And luckily, Mama Calf, or Sweetie Pie, had enough milk that she could give him some. And he grew up to be, well, we named our cows by their name. I said, I want these kids to know where the meat comes from. This is going to be Hamburger. And then, so they learned that cow was going to be slaughtered one day. And then the next one, I was a little richer. So I said, this is sirloin filet. So we had names for our cows so that they would know where they were going. And so we had Ham. His name was Ham, and I can't remember what
Filet mignon. I remember that one. But yeah. And then you call the butcher out, and they take away the calf and bring you back a week later, whatever, all the hamburger and pot roasts and things like that.
Yep. And the kids would be going, is this hamburger? And I says, eat your hamburger. Yes. And so they got used to it. So that was a good one.
Yeah, I think essentially every year we had 2 dairy cows, and so we'd alternate, and every year one of them would be giving birth and be active dairy cow, and then it would turn around, the next one would be the next year. And so it always seemed like we had, sometimes we could get almost 3 gallons of milk a day, and we'd give about 2 of those to the calf in a bucket, because we didn't want the calf to be, we wanted to wean him off and not be getting the milk straight from the mama. And so we had lots of milk and fresh cream, and yeah, I remember
chickens with eggs.
We got chickens with eggs, and yeah.
And a dog that'd go down to the pond that this Japanese guy had koi in it, and he loved to go grab a koi and bring it home, and we'd think, no, don't kill the fish. So we'd have to go over and apologize.
Well, yeah, our cats got fed well with lots of milk, but we didn't give them cat feed because they were mouse catchers. And they'd go out there and they'd catch all kinds of mice in the hay, and the bales of hay all stacked up in the hay barn. Yeah. But I remember I was very allergic to the hay, and if I had to throw hay and box it or stack it all up, pull it off of the truck or off the trailer, I would have to be totally wrapped up, duct taped my gloves so there was no space between my gloves and my shirt. big scarf around my neck and over my face and goggles on and a big tight hat because I just couldn't get hay to touch my skin. It would really give me a rash. And my dad would say, so what? You still got to be out there working. You still got to help stack up all the hay, unload the truck. And so we found ways to make it happen. And sometimes still when you pull off your gloves, there'd still be that dust in there. And sure enough, on my wrists or whatever that point would be, you'd get all kinds of rash and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, Mama, it was good to talk with you.
Yeah, that was fun to reminisce and remember being out on the ranch and crab apple throws and everything.
Oh, you didn't tell us about the crab apples. Or you want to wait that? Do you want to tell us that one real quick?
Oh, okay. Well, on the north side, we had the Williamses who lived over there.
This is in Malad.
And this is in Malad. And they had 2 children, Doug and Sandra. And Sandra was very studious and smart. And so I didn't have too much to do with her. And then Doug and I, well, we liked to play together. And he had a crab tree. Their mother had a crab tree out in front.
Like a crab apples.
Crab apples, and they're just very small and there's not much meat on the apple. Well, she still would cut them up and use them and make apple jelly. But the apples she didn't want, she'd leave on the tree, and pretty soon they were all dropping on the ground. And then Doug and I can't remember if the other kids got into it or not, but we'd have these really mean throwing crab apples at each other. And it's like you're getting hit with a rock. And we both got pretty good at hitting the spot. We'd know where the guy was running and we'd be throwing that crab apple right in the front of him to hit him. And so it made me think about when I think he turned 12, he became a baseball player. Maybe it was in junior high, but I don't know. We played up till then, and then he was a very good pitcher, and he did pitching very well. Now, when I graduated, it must have been in the summertime when I was 16 and 17. They had a team that would go around to the other little towns, and we would play them. And so I became their shortstop because I was very quick at getting that ball and getting it over to the first base fast and right on target. So I guess crab apples did us some good practice for all the things we did.
That's great.
I think that's about it.
No, that's great. All right, Mama. Well, thank you so much. And until the next interview, you have a good day.
Hey, John, thank you.